Okay, 27, 27-1. Page 886. Okay, we started doing this yesterday. 886. Chav Zayin. Is it you're about Corey?
I am.
Wow. That's one of the most difficult, underappreciated jobs.
The nice thing with this Parsha is the whole end. You say,
Yeah, but no. In general, people just like the balori, just go fast, get us out of here, type of thing. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of my brother's a balori, pronouncing and then down to right. It's a very
understanding what you're saying is important because it also lends itself to the.
It's very, very. My brother's a balori. I never had any interest in it. Too much work.
Not for my father and his father beforehand. So
Yeah.
many generations. I think 7 generations.
There's a lot of preparation. Okay, we're in 886. Okay, so again, we have these girls who come to the girls come to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they want this. What's the did? So it says Vayakrev Moshe es mishpatan lifnei Hashem. You got the big nun over there. Now, Rashi over here says that if you take a look at Rashi, it's the left column. So this cuts in a couple of different directions because Rashi says the left column 4 lines from the top. Nis alma halacha mimenu. The halacha was hidden from him. Why? Why did Moshe not know the halacha here? V'kan nifra al shenat al Torah. Here he was being punished for having taken the crown, literally taken a crown, meaning he said something that was a little bit, could be interpreted as a little bit haughty. Lomar, when he said earlier in the Torah, when they were appointed the judges, Moshe Rabbeinu said, you'll judge certain cases. V'hadavar asher yekshem ikem takrivun elai. What's difficult for you, you'll bring to me. You judge the cases, and if it's too difficult, bring me the hard stuff. I'll help you out. So that at one level, that was considered, well, it doesn't sound good. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu is the most humble. The Torah says he's the Unav B'Kol. The last thing that Moshe Rabbeinu was thinking about was being boastful. Yet there's accountability even at the most subtle levels, the finest levels. The bigger a person is, the higher a standard HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds them to. Maybe you could have found some other way of saying it. So at one level, it comes across, even if you didn't mean it at all, it comes across as perhaps a little bit boastful. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu here, and there's actually a medrash that says that the big nun, mishpatan, meaning they got right. Moshe Rabbeinu, you didn't know what something even some girls knew. How's that for humiliation? Even the girls got the shot in the Gemara, and you didn't. Yeah. So here, it's just emphasizing, that's one of the medrash that says that mishpatan, they got it, and you didn't. And that was, okay, but there's another approach. That's one approach. Davar acher, ru'uya ha'isa parsha l'likasev al yedei Moshe. This parsha should have been written by Moshe Rabbeinu. Ela shezachu benos tzalafcha. They merited v'nichteva al yadan. We said yesterday that we would have never heard of this man Tzalafcha if not for the fact that he had these wonderful daughters, and so and everything they did was well thought out. They came into they made sure that, that's why the Torah says they came when everybody was standing together to make sure. See, they're trying to get property now. So the co-litigants have to be in Beis Din because Beis Din can't paskin without the co-litigants being there. And they're not coming with any sort of unreasonable claim. I spoke yesterday. It's not because some emotional feminism thing. They've got a monetary claim over here. And they did it in a way. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, there's also, I told you, started saying yesterday, he takes himself off the case because a judge has to know if he's got a personal bias. A judge who feels that he got any sort of personal negia, any sort of personal bias is not invalid. There's a Gemara in Ksubis that says one of the Amoraim had a feather fell on him, and somebody removed the feather from him, and he said to him, why'd you do that? He says, well, I'll see you in court later today. because he was a judge. He immediately took himself off the case. He feels he cannot remain neutral, impartial, and he takes himself off the case. So a judge has to know when there's a situation, because let's say you go to the local Beis Din. Often in a Jewish community, everybody knows each other. The Dayanim may know you also. They know you. They know your father. They have to make a judgment whether or not they could about themselves, whether or not they can remain impartial. And Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching us over here. Once they said, well, he wasn't with the group of Korach. He wasn't with the Korach rebellion when they rebelled against you. So Moshe Rabbeinu felt that that's shochad dvorim. They're being bribed verbally. And therefore he takes himself off the case. Then the next pasuk, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe lemor, Kain benos slavcha dovros. They are speaking correctly. Nason titein lem achuzas nachla v'socha chayavim. You must give them a portion. Ve'avartem es nachlas aviim lem. You give them their father's portion. And then the Torah goes on and talks about all the inheritance laws. And I want to go into this for a second. Vel b'nei Yisrael tedaber lemor. Ish ki yamus uben ein lo. When a man dies, doesn't have a son. Ve'avartem es nachalaso labito. You must give the portion to the daughter. And the Torah goes on and describes the various hierarchy of inheritance. That if there's first, it goes to the sons. If there's no daughter, if there are no children, then it goes to the father. If no father, then it goes to the brothers, to the uncles. And there's eventually you're going to find some relative somewhere. That's what the Torah says. Now, the basic idea of inheritance is a very interesting halacha. First of all, there's one of the areas of life where there is more theft than anything else, because you have, even among observant Jews, a man dies, and let's say he's got 3 sons and 3 daughters. So the boys divide the property. The boys inherit the property, and often you'll have situations where even somebody who's Torah observant will then go to secular court and challenge the distribution, and they're actually secular court's going to award it to them, because secular court men and women are exactly the same. All you have to do is, if I feel I'm a woman, so I'm a woman. Nowadays it's just what I believe what I believe I am. So they go to court and they challenge it, and then it's awarded to them. They are stealing according to halacha, because according to halacha they're not entitled to it. And this is one of the most common areas, because people get upset because sometimes there's big bucks. And so, the daughter goes to court. She says, she goes to Beis Din, and Beis Din says to her, well, you're really not entitled to any. Depending on how the will. There are ways to distribute it if you give it away as a gift before death. Yes, but if it's as an inheritance, then the girls are not entitled. So sometimes people will challenge it. They'll go to secular court, they'll challenge it, and the court will award it to them. And what they're doing is they're taking something that is not halachic. This is something that comes up in court many times. Even if, for example, let's say you have a gripe, somebody wronged you and you want to go to Beis Din. Let's say the guy will not respond to Beis Din. Beis Din does not have the power to enforce. They could paskin. So you go to Beis Din, and either the co-litigant either doesn't show up at Beis Din, or he does show up at Beis Din when he finds out that Beis Din paskins, you owe him $100,000. He says, well, he fights on Beis Din. I'm not interested. Do me something. Then you can get permission to go to a secular court. But even then, you have to get permission from the Beis Din to go to a non-Jewish court. But to go to a non-Jewish court before you've got permission is called a chilul Hashem, as if Torah law cannot render decisions, and you go to a secular court. But if you go to the secular court, even then there are limitations, because you're only allowed to take, let's say a secular court says, okay, he has to pay the $100,000 plus another $500,000 penalty, punitive damages, whatever they call it. Even there are limitations on what you're allowed to take, because if they're awarding you more than Torah would give you, that's also stealing, because that's not something you're entitled to. So these are very complicated. Obviously, in any individual situation, you need an individual posek who's an expert on these things. In other words, Rabbi Bradowitz, a posek who's an expert on these things to consult with him. But I'm just telling you that when it comes to inheritance, so on the one hand, inheritance is something that goes on all over the world. Father to son. It's understood that you inherit, that if parents die, the children inherit from them. But in the Torah, it's a little deeper than that. First of all, it's the only time in Torah where property transfers without making a kinyan. You don't have to show any act of acquisition. That means if Reuven dies, and he has two sons, Shimon and Levi, the minute he dies, they automatically own the property. All his estate, all his property. The only thing that hasn't been determined is how those two are going to divide it up. But without any sort of kinyan, chazaka, it's automatically theirs. It's an automatic when a man dies that it goes to his children, number one. Then the children have to decide how they're going to divide it up unless the father specified in the will. But it's a very interesting halacha. You don't know, no kinyan is needed. No act of acquisition whatsoever, number one. Number two, the soul of the deceased. It's not just because, well, we have, that's how it should be. The soul of the deceased actually has at some level a desire that the continuity of his property goes to the next of kin. There's something in the neshama. His neshama actually wants, and it's even more than that, to take it even further. Let's say somebody killed somebody unintentionally, or Reuven murdered Shimon. The soul of Shimon, who the victim, wants and will find some sort of consolation and rest when Reuven is executed. That means the idea of punishing the murderer is not only because of benefit to society and it creates a deterrent and it teaches people don't commit crimes. There's actually something at the neshama level that the neshama is restless until justice is done. And part of that also applies to inheritance. When a man dies, his neshama at a certain level, there's a restlessness until he takes over the property goes to children. The property goes to somebody else that somehow is affecting the neshama. That's what the Mefarshim say. Okay. Now, take a look at, and again, there are ways to get around this. There are ways to get around this because if you give it away as a gift, you can gift your property to anybody that you want. You can't bequeath it as an inheritance. They're inheritance laws, and it has to be done certain ways, and contracts have to be drawn up, and you better get somebody who knows the halacha very well. You better get somebody involved who knows the halacha very well, because it could mean making or losing a lot of money. The difference between making and losing a lot of money when it comes to that. Okay, let's go to the next section, top 888. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and this is should beg a big question, gentlemen. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Alei el har ha'avorim hazeh, go up to this mountain called Avorim. It's on you're going to be on the mountain. U're'es ha'aretz asher nasati livnei Yisrael. And I want you to see the land that I've given the Jewish people. And Chazal say Moshe Rabbeinu saw Hashem revealed to him the entire land. According to one source, he showed him even the under earth mineral tunnels where there's gold and silver and everything. It showed him all of Israel. Moshe could look in from the mountain. He sees the entire land of Israel. V'ra'isa, so you'll see it. Then you're going to die just like Aaron died. Now you notice the turn of phrase where it talks about somebody dies, V'nesafta el amecha. Now, what does that mean, literally? You will be gathered into your people. I mean, when a person dies, he's not gathered into people, he goes into the earth. And there are worms. He's not gathered in. There are no people waiting there in the grave. So what does that mean, So this is one of the expressions that we see. What's that? The world of neshamas. This is one of the signs, one of the signs in the Torah that we see that there's something for the neshama after death. Because nesafta lamecha, the body isn't nesafta lamecha. So where is it? And their sources say when a person dies, his next of kin come and greet him. Apparently, it's a little bit disconcerting for the neshama, and therefore there are people who meet him, and his relatives come and they kind of give him and make it a soft landing before then he goes to judgment. And the judgment, according to certain sources, are going to be the gedolim from his generation. The court that judges him in Shemayim is made up of the Gedolei Hador who were in his generation, because then they can judge what kind of tests he had.
Clearly ones who already passed.
As opposed to the people, the Gedolim from the 1100s had different tests, but the Gedolim from the 20th century know that he had the test of technology and the test of this and test of that, test of drugs, test of liberals, test of, he had all these tests that he had, and they're the ones who have to set to determine how well he did. That's what the Svarim say. Yeah, Mike?
How can the Gedolim judge you of your generation judge you they may still be on earth while you
No. We're talking about the ones who are up there. We're talking about the Gedolim who are up there already. Yeah, the ones down here, they got other issues. They got to deal with the people down here. The ones up there, they'll deal with that sort of thing. So now the question over here is like this. Hashem says there are two big questions over here. There are two questions. Hashem says to Moshe right here, get up on the mountain. I want to show you the land of Israel, but you're not going in there.
Why would you do that?
Why not?
It's kind of a tease.
All right, exactly. Question number one. I used to do this to my kids on Friday nights. After we have the Shabbos meal, and then I bring out some licorice or some snacks. And what I would do is, obviously as a father, you want to get a little job satisfaction. I'm not just going to give it to them. So I would take like a piece of licorice and I'd say, guys, I'm going to be motzi you. And I'd make a bracha and I'd take a bite and I'd say, Reuven and Ploni, I'm thinking about you right now. Yeah, Shimon, I'm thinking about you now. I'm being motzi you with the candy. And they'd be looking at me like this. And my wife said to me numerous times, you could be arrested for certain things that you do to them, which is probably true. And eventually I give them the candy, whatever it would be. But that's it. Would you, if I have I knew a guy told me that he had a kid when one of his kids would misbehave. They would bring out the dessert or whatever the snacks were, and he wouldn't get any, but he had to sit there and watch everybody else ate the snacks. That was the punishment. You had to watch them. And it's Tzar B'alei Chaim. And by the way, there are sources that say in the world to come, Gehenna is going to be, for certain Rishaim, that the tzaddikim will be at a feast, and the Rishaim are going to be sitting there at the table. The Rishaim are going to be standing over them, watching them. So there's another opinion where it says, no, they're not going to be standing watching them, because then they'll have at least feel that people will, there'll be a sense that like they're waiters. They're going to be sitting at the table with no food watching them. That's when the Gehenna. That's one of they have to sit at the table with them and watch them. That's one of the descriptions. Okay, so why is he doing it to Moshe? If I had a chocolate bar, would you rather watch me eat it if you're not getting it, or not watch me eat it? Of course, I don't want to watch you eat it. So why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking Moshe Rabbeinu and showing the land? There you go, but you're not going in. Number one, you show him his accomplishment. What's your guy? It could be showing the accomplishment. What's the second question? Before you answer that question, what's the second question? Why do you got to go up on a mountain? I got news for you, gentlemen. There isn't a mountain you could stand on from which you can see the entire land of Israel. You could be on the banks of the Jordan, on the mountains of Jordan looking to Israel. You cannot see the entire land of Israel. You can't see all the way up to the goal line. You can't see the whole land. So why does Moshe Rabbeinu go, if he's showing him anyway a supernatural vision, so why does he put him up on a mountain for? What do you go up on a mountain for? What's the answer to the first question, Benny? Why is
one idea is just, like Rabbi was saying, that there's this degree of restlessness until you get to see your next of kin would be the Jewish people for Moshe, to see what they're going to inherit was like one thing. But I also, it seems like, even connecting to the second question with Moshe being on top of a mountain, I assume Bnei Israel knew that he was going up. So there's kind of like a publicity to this, to see that.
That's the mountain. The mountain.
That's the mountain, and then he's also like Bnei Israel seeing that Moshe, is going to do this like one last trip or whatever it happens, like to see that how much Eretz Israel means to him.
Oh! Now we're getting there. So answer number one is, I don't know about the publicity. What you said about you seeing your life accomplishments, sometimes at least I can't do it, but let me see what it could be. The Mefarshim would say, first of all, anytime HaKadosh Baruch Hu does a nace, he minimizes the nace as much as possible. A miracle has to be done, but there is as much teva, much of natural rule that goes into. The classic example is putting Noach in an ark. That teva could not hold all the animals in the world. It could not hold even two of, and it certainly couldn't hold a year's worth of food that you need to feed elephants. And what do elephants consume? 300 pounds a day of worth of food, and bears and hippopotami, and it was impossible. So why did you do a teva? Because we're going to save Noach and Mei. You do as much as we can to conceal the miracle, and the rest of it is a nace. What would you do if you wanted to get a good view of something? Where would you go? You go hop up on a mountain. That's what we do. We just naturally go up on a mountain to get a look. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on a mountain to get a look, and you see more than you could possibly see. It transcends natural law. Okay. Here, there's a question. Why is it, you know, that when they were debating a Jewish homeland, where were they? What were they considering making the Jewish homeland? Uganda. Uganda's a nice place. Africa's a nice, rich. Uganda's a nice place, as long as you don't get kidnapped there. You know, you're hijacked there. And I told you a guy on my block who was actually I had a guy living on my block who was actually at Entebbe. Today he's a Rosh Kollel. He became a Baal Tshuva and he's a Rosh Kollel. You know the famous picture where they're loading the car onto the plane, and some couple of guys are looking back at you. The guy in the middle is today a Rosh Kollel. You know, in Uganda. He has a nice place. Africa's a nice continent. Africa's a blessed land. The Gemara says Africa's a beautiful place. Yet even secular Jews who were all for, Herzl had suggested at one point that all the Jews should convert to Christianity. Do you know that? Founder of Judaism, except for a handful of people. He suggested everybody embrace Christianity. Herzl wasn't a religious man. He had a beard. But yet, where was his focus? Israel. You know, some land surrounded by 80 million sworn enemies on all sides, with swamps. You know, they came here and had malaria when they came to the first Olim. They had to drain the swamps here. There was nothing here. There was nothing in Israel. There was a lot of sand, a dusty old strip of land over here. So what was this yearning? Where did this yearning come from? The answer is everything Moshe Rabbeinu did was eternal. Exactly what Binny said. Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Torah. The Torah is eternal. Whatever Moshe touched, turned into eternity. There's an eternal longing for the land of Israel. Even people not connected, they come to Israel, something happens to them. They just feel something different. It's not just because you saw a lot of Jews. You come to Israel and something happens, like funny traffic, falafel. A lot of things happen when you come to Israel, but a lot of good things happen. Yeah, I had a guy here once today. Today he's involved in outreach himself. So he was completely secular, and he was traveling the world. He was standing in the Jordanian mountains. He was into Jordan, looking into Israel from Jordan. He had no plans to come to Israel. It was not on his agenda. And he was standing there, and he remembered once hearing in Hebrew school when he was a kid that Moses looked into the land of Israel but wasn't allowed to enter. Right? So this guy was standing on the mountains in Jordan looking into Israel. He thought to himself, hey, I have a chance to do something that Moses couldn't do. So he came to Israel, right? And then one thing or another, he ended up in Ohr Somayach, and the rest is history. Poor guy just stayed in Jordan, man. You blew it, kid. You believe those Bible stories. He came over to Israel, and the rest is history. So there's something, there's an attraction here. There's a draw. Where'd that come from? We think because Jews and because this. The answer is it started over here. Of course, Baruch is saying not to go in Moshe Rabbeinu and take a look at it like, oh, wow, it's breathtaking. Go look at it and create that yearning for the land of Israel. That yearning then ends up in all of Klal Yisrael, without us even knowing. What Italians who have moved to America and made a lot of money, whether legally or otherwise, some of them are running a good geschäft over there. It's a perfect, whether legally. What Italians have a yearning for Italy. Oh, Sicily, my favorite. What Irishmen in America who are making a good parnassa as cops in Chicago, taking a lot of money on bribes. What Irish cop in Chicago has a yearning to go back to Ireland? Remember, they used to say an honest cop in Chicago is after you bribed him, he stayed bought. That was an honest cop. So what Frenchman in America who's running a French restaurant and getting other people to eat snails, and he's making money on it. He has a yearning to go back to France. All of a sudden, Jews from all over the place. We got to get to Israel. My bar mitzvah in Israel, wedding in Israel. Let's get to Israel. That yearning starts over here with Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, take a look at Posuk Tes Zayin. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going in there, but you're not going to go. You're going in. You can see it. It's like my parents used to say, take your kids, say, you could look, but you can't touch. Ever hear that line? Yeah, we're going shopping. You could look, but you can't touch. So I used to go to my parents. I used to go shopping. I was actually 19, and my parents. I went with my parents once. They had to go get some housewares or something. So we went to one of the department stores, the Sears or one of these places in Chicago. So my parents went to look at the housewares. So I'd driven them. So I went over and I'm in the sporting goods area. I'm looking at some sporting goods stuff. All of a sudden I hear over the intercom, will lost child David Kaplan please come to the checkout counter? So I'm like, what? As I come walking up there, and my dad is laughing. They told them to page lost child David Kaplan. So I come up there, and the lady just bursts out laughing because she's expecting a 4-year-old. I come. Now I have 15 minutes of fame. I heard my name over the will lost child David Kaplan. So I used to go. My younger brother wouldn't go with my parents. He was a little kid, very logical little kid. From the earliest age, I'd say, well, we're going shopping. You want to come with us? And he would say to him, are you going to buy me anything? No. Can I touch stuff? He goes, no. He says, so why would I want to go? Why would I want to go? He didn't go. He didn't go. And this is a kid who used to go to airports. When they went to airports, he went with. You know why? Because he would, look at the airplanes. He could do on TV. He would go to remember the telephones that had coin returns? And he would go around the airport. My parents would be at the airport, and he would look at these coin returns. He'd come up with he'd be getting, people to drop nickel, a dime in the thing. He'd come up something with $2, $3. Every day it was like a parnasa for me, because I used to take it out of his drawer, and so I got all the benefits without doing any of the work, But so Moshe Rabbeinu, you can look, but you can't. You're not going in there. Okay, so he's told he's going to die. Vaydaber Moshe el Hashem lemor. What's the very next thing Moshe says? Yifkod Hashem Elokei Aruchos L'chol Basar Ish Aleideh. Put somebody in charge of the people. You see what a Jewish leader is. A Jewish leader, he's told he's going to die. What's his first concern? What's going to be with the Jewish people now? What's going to be with the Jewish people? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need somebody to take over for me, for the Jewish people. And what kind of man? Asher Yetze, we'll come back to Rashi and say, Asher Yetze lifneim v'asher Yotze Yavo lifneim. He'll take them out to battle. He's not going to stay back. He's going to lead them into battle, not send them out while he's in a safe place. V'asher Yavo lifneim v'asher Yotziim v'asher Yaviim v'lo tia adas Hashem katzon asher lo ra. The congregation should not be like sheep that does not have a shepherd. Now the first thing is with sheep, you have a leader. Who's the leader of the sheep, the flock of sheep? Usually there's a goat that's the leader of the sheep, right? There's one, or not the goat, the head sheep. What's the head sheep? There's one sheep that it's like sheep following one sheep goes off. I forgot what he's called. The sheep, the head honcho for the sheep. So they have what? Could be it's the ram. Somebody leads the sheep. The sheep are led by one, and they follow the leader. But that leader isn't really a leader. He's just the guy who goes at the head. He says, sheep, who leads the sheep responsibly? A shepherd. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, not just one of them. It's got to be somebody on a very high level who can lead the people over here. Now, if you'll notice, he calls them. Take a look back at Tesayin for a second. Yifkod Hashem Elokei Aruchos. Take a look at Rashi. What's that?
A bellwether?
What's that? That's the...
They say it's the sheep that leads the top of
The bellwether. Oh, yeah, the old bellwether. That's what I was thinking. It slipped my tongue. The bellwether. What has a bellwether got to do with sheep? I have no idea. So take a look at Pasuk Tezayin. It starts on the right column, last line of the right column. Next line. Next column, fourth line. Elokei haruchos. How does Darsko translate it? The God of the spirits of all flesh. We know that Hashem is the God of the spirit. Why does it say Elokei haruchos? Lama nemar. Why does it say this turn of phrase of Elokei haruchos? What's it got to do with the spirits? So listen carefully. Amar lefanov, Ribbono shel olam, golui lefanecha you know, daito shokol echad ve'echad. You know the temperament and the mindset of every person. Ve'enan domim zelazeh. No two people are alike. Manei alehem manhig. Appoint a leader. Sheyehi sovel kol echad ve'echad lefi daito. A leader that can bear each person according to their temperament. I got news for you, gentlemen. I got news for you. The leaders of the Jewish people, do you know what kind of patience that these people have to have? The Reb Chaim Kanievskis of the world, who had nonstop petitioners, nonstop people. You had people who were driving them nuts, people who were not necessarily mentally balanced, people coming in and making, even the Stiplers at Sal, Reb Chaim's father, who was much older, and he was towards the end of his life, and his door was still open. And they had certain people would come in, sometimes repeaters, and they were called what you'd call sometimes nudniks, with all sorts of strange questions and wasting his time. So they once asked him, why do you give these people time? The nudniks, why do you make yourself accessible to them? He said, who knows if I'm not alive in the merit of the fact that I give these people time? That means you have to do chesed with them also. And I mean, you think to yourself, don't you have a nudniks in your life? Or even worse, maybe you're someone else's nudnik. Maybe I'm your nudnik. You say, and you need patience, and you got one guy coming aggressively, and you got another guy who takes him a long time to get to the point. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says we need a leader, a Jewish leader, a rabbi of a community, a communal rabbi more than any other rabbi. He has to be the rabbi of a shul. You got all sorts of, this guy tells you what to do, and this guy never, and you got to have patience like a saint. So here, I saw one of the Mefarshim says, why is it called Ruchos, the god of the winds? We could appreciate this, because I know the pilot on the plane always tells you, based on the winds, how they're blowing, he makes various adjustments. In the old days, ships, based on how the winds were blowing, they would adjust the masts based on how the ships are blowing. That means that a leader, you have to make the adjustment with each person. And not only that, there were Gedolim, who one person comes in and he says he's going through a terrible time, he had a family tragedy, and the Gadol sits there crying with him. Then the next guy comes in and says, oh, Mazel Tov, my son just got engaged. And he got Mazel Tov, and he smiles. They got to be able to turn it on and off and make those adjustments all day. And then you got to hear the tzaras of people. It takes a tremendous amount out of you. We look at them, wow, they have such honor, such kavod that they get. That kavod that they get, it pales in comparison to the yoke, to the difficulty of being a leader. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Now, if you take a look at Rashi says, why did he pick him? Now go to the bottom. Now to go to the bottom of the previous column. Yafko, I'm going backwards now for a second. Yifkod Hashem, Kevan Sheshama Moshe, She'amar Lo Amokom. When Moshe heard that Hashem said, Tein Nachlas Slavcha Livnosa, when Moshe heard that Hashem said, give the portion of Slavcha to his daughters, Amar Higia Sha'a She'ete Bat Sorchai. The time has come for me to ask for my needs. After all, you see land is being distributed. Sheyirshu Banai Eskidulasi. My sons should now take over my leadership position. Amar Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lo Kach Also B'Machshava Lefanai. No, that's not what I thought. Kidayu Yoshua Lita in Schar Shimusho. Yoshua is worthy of now being compensated for all the years that he served you as a loyal disciple. Shalomosh mitocha oil. He never left the tent. V'zeu shenemar Shlomo. This is what Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishli. Notzer te'ena yochel pirya. The one who guards the fig tree, he's the one who's going to eat the fruit. So Yoshua was the one. He was the attendant. He learned with Moshe Rabbeinu more than anybody else. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu's sons must have been great men. Otherwise, Moshe wouldn't have expected them to even be candidates to take over. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, well, my sons will take over. And Hashem said, no. That's not how I see it. Yoshua is the most worthy. And Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to give it over. He's going to give the leadership to Yoshua. The question is, what's the connection of this pasuk, Notzer te'ena yochal period, the one who guards the fig tree, he'll eat the fruits. What's that got to do with any of this? I mean, the one who guards it, you cut up a couple of other analogies. What's a fig tree got to do with it? So the Gemara says that Torah is compared to a fig tree. Why? There's something unique about fig tree. Fig trees are distinct. There's something very distinctive about fig trees that are different than all other trees. And don't tell me that they grow figs. That I know. The apple trees don't grow figs. That I know. But there's something very distinctive about fig trees. Anybody know what it is?
They have to be pollinated by the insects and whatnot?
Probably the other trees also, I imagine, to a certain extent. I'm not sure what pollinated means, but yeah, I think they all get pollinated. Oh yeah, that old pollinated, yeah. Yeah, I think that they're all in the same pollinated category. So there's something, and I remember I lived in Israel as a little kid, so we used to pick figs. There were figs on a fig tree. There's something distinctive about fig trees. They don't ripen at the same time. Apple trees, the whole tree ripens at one time. It's a harvest. You harvest them all. Fig trees, as the Gemara says, which is true. I've seen, not that the Gemara doesn't need my confirmation. I'm just saying I've seen this by experience. You go up a fig tree and you look at the fig. We go up the fig tree to pick figs. And you go up the fig tree to pick the figs, and many of them have not ripened yet. Some have ripened. The next day you go up, a few more have ripened. The next day you go up, a few more have ripened. They ripen at different times. Torah is compared to a fig tree because when you learn Torah, you can learn it 10 times. You learn it the 11th time, you find a new insight. You learn it the 12th time, you find a new insight. So Notzer Te'ena Yochel Piri is referring to Yeshua. That Yeshua was the one he learned Torah with Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeshua was the one who was with Moshe Rabbeinu all along. Since he was the one with Moshe Rabbeinu all along, now he's the one who's going to eat the figs off the tree. He's the one who's going to get the Torah. He's going to get it from Moshe Rabbeinu. One last point. Moshe Rabbeinu, one last point. Moshe Rabbeinu then says, "Vayomer Hashem Moshe, kach lecha es Yoshua binun isha asher ruach bo." Take Yoshua. He's got the ruach. He's got the spirit. He'll be able to be the leader. V'samachta es yodcha olav. Put your hand on Yoshua. You're going to do smicha. This is why it's called smicha, when a person gets smicha. Smicha is where a person is. What does smicha mean? You place your hands on him. You're transferring it to him. You're allowing something. Nowadays, smicha is you get a piece of paper that says that you can paskin, but there's an idea called smicha. Moshe Rabbeinu is putting his hands on Yoshua. What's he doing by that? He is transmitting whatever Moshe Rabbeinu has. He's made up of something very spiritual, and somehow he's transmitting it to Yoshua. And later on, we're going to see Moshe Rabbeinu uses two hands. Hashem said, put one hand on. Moshe Rabbeinu gave this over. I mean, this is very difficult for us to understand this concept of how you give over something internal. Moshe Rabbeinu gives it over with two hands. Very generously, he gives it to Yoshua. And I think that the emphasis is that, remember, how's Moshe Rabbeinu feeling right now? I wanted this to be my son. And instead it's Yoshua. And as much as you love a disciple, you love your son more. But Moshe Rabbeinu, in spite of everything, Hashem says one hand, he puts on two hands. Symbolically, that Yoshua is submissive to Moshe Rabbeinu, but connected. You're connected to the Rebbe. It says Moshe Rabbeinu is like the sun, Yoshua is like the moon. And you're connected to the Rebbe, number one. Number two, the smicha allows for Yoshua to have siyata d'shmaya. When you're the leader, you got to have siyata d'shmaya. When you're a posek, you know how often it happens to poskim that somebody comes in and asks him a shaila, and he had just learned that the day before. It happens sometimes. You got a certain siyata d'shmaya. There was, I think, Reb Simcha Zelig Rieger, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the biggest poskim in Brisk. If it wasn't Reb Simcha Zelig, maybe it was Reb Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. It was one of the biggest poskim from years back. So somebody came to him and asked him a shaila, a very complicated shaila. And he said he's going to have to research it because he doesn't know, and he's going to have to look it up. And he went to it was Erev Shabbos, I think, and he said, I'm going to look it up when I get back from the mikveh. I'll have to take a few hours. I got to go search around. There's going to be a job. So the person left. He said, come back in a few hours. He went to the mikveh, and on the way home, he saw like a discarded piece of a sefer on the ground. So he picked it up to put it in the gniza. And he takes a look at this paper, and it turns out that it was a tshuva that was written by one of the poskim from the previous generation addressing this very question that he had just been asked. Right? Oh, that's convenient. Boy, I love when that happens. Yeah. And there it is, the old tshuva on the floor. Yeah, that's siyata d'shmaya. That's siyata d'shmaya. Number 3, putting the hands. I don't know what this means. You can't ask me. I will only tell you that his hands were dripping with the spirituality. That's why he put his hands on it. It wasn't only coming from him. It was coming. His hands were dripping with it. They were oozing with it. So I have no idea. What that means. But that's what the Medrash says. All right, gentlemen.